So this is my custom built desktop PC. I've been using this for a year and I just upgraded it to the i9-12900K Alder Lake processors from Intel. I had to swap out the motherboard and put a Z690 to support the new architecture, and I swapped out the RAM for Corsair Dominator Memory DDR5, and there's about 64 gigabytes. If you were to build this PC today, it would cost around $5,000 if you can get an RTX 3080 for a good price. On the right-hand side, I have a MacBook Pro 16 M1 Pro. This costs about $2,900, but I've also reviewed the MacBook Pro 14 M1 Max, which costs about $3,900. I generally don't like making laptop versus desktop videos, but this year has been really different. These MacBook Pros have exceeded our expectations. Now, when it comes to synthetic benchmarks, this Alder Lake CPU completely dominates the M1 Max. Not only are single core clock speeds the fastest I've ever seen, the multi-core speed is more than double than what this MacBook Pro can do. But I've told you guys this many times, okay? Synthetic benchmarks never tell the true story. There's other hardware and efficiencies that play a big role to determine how well a computer performs. If you're doing something like 3D work, you're still better off with a desktop PC. A lot of the apps that people use have not been updated for Apple Silicon and still don't offer that kind of efficiency that the video apps currently do. For example, After Effects, which runs great on the M1 Pro and M1 Max, runs a lot faster on the Alder Lake processor. I don't know if you guys saw my M1 Pro review. You got to discount those results. They're actually false. 2 days later, Adobe updated After Effects and Puget Bench updated their actual tests, and the scores are completely different. And the same thing holds true when it comes to Blender. The next version of Blender is supposed to be optimized for Apple Silicon, but it's not yet. And if you can Blender render using an RTX card, it's just gonna dominate any CPU on the market. But if you're a video creator, which I feel like that's the best place these MacBook Pros perform, the M1 Max beats out this desktop PC in a lot of scenarios. If you're doing Adobe Premiere Pro, the M1 Max is faster than this desktop PC, but Alder Lake does perform better than the M1 Pro. If you're using DaVinci Resolve and you're doing a render, the M1 Max comes out on top with Alder Lake somewhere in the middle and the M1 Pro just below it. Now, render tests don't tell the entire story. I personally use DaVinci Resolve as my main editor, and I do find scrubbing to be smoother on Alder Lake. I do find multicam performance to be better, but it's not that much of a difference. It's very minute. Now, if you're a developer, Mozilla Firefox did compile faster on this PC. It did it in 13 minutes compared to 14 on the MacBook Pro. But still, 13 minutes with a 16-core processor compared to 10, it's not that big of a difference. But in all fairness, this MacBook Pro is based off of a Unix kernel, so it should be more efficient since Mozilla is optimized for that. Now, the reason why this MacBook Pro is so much faster than this PC, not so much faster, but why it's faster than this PC when it comes to editing and exporting video is because of the media engine. Those accelerators that are part of the system on chip play a massive role. It can offload ProRes, H.264, H.265, and frees up the CPU and GPU. Now I know this Intel machine technically has QuickSync, which is something similar, but it's nowhere nearly as optimized as what this media engine can do. So if you're in the video world, MacBook Pros are at the top again. If you're still doing 3D work, I'd hold off on a Mac. You can still get better performance on a PC just because a lot of these apps haven't been optimized for Apple Silicon yet, so you might have to wait for that. But should you buy a PC or Mac? Who am I to tell you, right? It comes down to your subjective preference. Do you like Mac OS better than Windows? What type of user are you? Are you a gamer and a creator like me? Then you might get more mileage out of a PC because you get the best of both worlds. Like, don't get me wrong, the performance is good, but this is still not a gaming machine. A lot of the AAA titles just don't run properly on this, and you can see that with this performance chart. But if you prefer portability and quietness and fan noise, the MacBook Pro is king. As for price, these are both very expensive computers, but I feel like with a PC, you have a lot more wiggle room based on your budget, right? You can really tailor your budget to the type of performance you need. Whereas with the MacBook Pro, there's the high end, and then you kind of have like the entry level, which is the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro 13, which are great performers, but I still feel Apple is missing a middle ground. And I don't think we're gonna see that middle ground until 2022. Either way, I hope this helps you make a decision on what best fits your needs. These are both great options, but depending on what you're doing, one might be better than the other. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because if you did, feel free to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.